Welcome to the Grassroots Army podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can. Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the Grassroots Army podcast. I am, of course, your host, Garrett Sodano, and I haven't gone live in a while because I've been traveling around the state with my butt on fire, trying to motivate and inspire Michigan, America's greatest asset. We, the people, continue to hammer down because we are just a little over 3 weeks away from this election. And I know, like a lot of you out there, we're ready for it to be over. Let's get it done. Let's move on. I really feel like everyone's vote is already made up. We're not going to be swaying too many more people, but we are going to chase after every single vote we can. We are going to continue to hammer down, have constructive conversations to continue to sway the people who have a little bit of logic and common sense left, because what we're dealing with, and a lot of people who have been volunteering in this grassroots army with door knocking and phone calls, with Trump Force 47 and Turning Point Action, and everyone else out there who has just been giving up their lives basically for this country. Number one, I thank you. But number two, people are starting to get a little tired. They are. And it's totally normal for you to feel tired and frustrated and a little exhausted at the end here. But this is the fourth quarter. We have to continue to hammer down. However, a lot of questions I get, and a lot of what we're dealing with, is brainwashing. The woke mind virus is what Elon Musk calls it. And I agree with him. If you reflect back over the last 8 years, even more than that, when President Trump announced that he was running, the narrative started to build. The Democrats and the corporate media, which is controlled mainly by the Democrats, started to push out a narrative President Trump. And that's how you basically brainwash people, is you consistently and aggressively push out a narrative nonstop. And if you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe what? That it's true. And so when we're going around and we're having conversations with people, and I deal with this all the time, you have conversations with these folks and they just have Trump derangement syndrome. And they're so emotional. They're so emotional of the hatred of Donald Trump, because that's how effective the Democrat machine has been in brainwashing people. And so with brainwashing, it is a very, very complicated kind of process to get through that person's mind, because they have a belief system now, okay? A belief system that Trump is evil. Trump is going to turn this country into the devil, right? He's fascist and everything else. And they push out that narrative, and they program to constantly nonstop push it out. And that builds a belief system, a solid belief system in people. And we were at an event in Branch County, the Branch County Revolutionaries, great group of people. And a woman showed up from another county. I think it was St. Joe. And Kevin Rinke was with me at the time. And we were on stage answering questions. And we were talking about leadership and the vision of not only the state and country, and what we need is now good leaders. And she kind of came out and kind of grandstanded a little bit. And you always know with these people, when you answer up with a question and answer session, they start off by asking or saying this: well, I don't have a question, I have a statement. And so when that happens, you're like, oh, here we go. All right. They go to other people's events and they want to grandstand. And she basically hit me and Kevin and saying, don't listen to these guys about leadership, but the state and the federal government's garbage. It should be down the local level. And when you're talking to people, they're saying, keep your emotions out of it. But I disagree. We need to put our emotions into it. And she's right about the local level. I agreed with her that, but I 100% disagree with her strategy of talking to folks on using emotion. Because what happens is, and this is what we see, is very polarizing. We have people who believe very strongly in the right and people who believe very strongly in the left. You put those two people in the room, 9 times out of 10, not a lot's going to get done. Heels are going to be stuck in the sand, and they're just going to go at each other with all this emotion, all this aggression. And the people who are undecided, like folks in the middle who don't really affiliate with either side of the aisle, they just listen to this and they're like, man, I just want to be told the truth. And so these are the people that you want to strategically have conversations with, okay? Because you're not going to affect the brainwashed folks as of right now. It's going to take years, folks, if we could ever get through those people, which I don't know. And I don't think we have the money, the corporate media, and most of the social media to be able to effectively unbrainwash these folks. Because there's a book, I used to teach this about the mind model. There's a book, old book. It's the same age as me. So it's old. It's 46 years old. It's called Snapping. Okay. And in Snapping, this book talks about the cults of the 80s and how do you effectively, or the cults in the 70s, excuse me, and in the early 80s. And what they would do with these religious cults is they would get these young people who had very malleable minds, and they would get them in these cults. And 24/7, they wouldn't let them see their family, talk to the family. They would stay on their little compound and don't let these folks leave. And 24/7, they would brainwash them. Okay, that the person ahead of that cult is the Messiah or the person you need to follow. And 24/7, these people would be brainwashed, and they would start to believe that that person is, in his essence, was Jesus Christ or God or whatever you want to call it. And they would follow this person, even commit suicide. We've seen cases like this, right? So what would happen is they would hire kind of like, I call them the special ops Navy SEALs at the time. These people would go in and kidnap their kids back, right? So they would hire this group of people that would go in and infiltrate these cults and basically re-kidnap their people out from this cult. And they would bring them in a room and they would start the process of trying to unbrainwash these people. All right. So they would do this by asking questions. The power of asking questions, because when you tell people who to vote for and you tell people they need to do this or that, what do majority of people do? They give you two middle fingers, like, yeah, whatever, because they have a belief system that they're going to protect. And so here's what would happen is they would start to ask questions to people to lower their ego, per se, and then they would be able to input information at that time. I know it's a little complicated, but you're going to see what I'm talking about here when I show you two examples. But here's the crazy part. So finally, once they started to unbrainwash these people, and it was a process of weeks of doing this, right? They would get in the room and they would, hammer these folks' questions and start to get them to question what was going on, right? Like, is this guy really the Messiah? What miracles or what has he done? And would force the person to answer. They didn't tell that person, but when you ask questions and allow that person to answer, if they can't answer, you start to break down that ego, and then you can input that mind with information at that time when the mind is neutral. So here's what they found, though. There was a part or a process of rehabilitation at that time that if they didn't continue with the unbrainwashing and constantly put new input in this person's mind, what would that person do? It would fall back to the old belief system, which was the brainwashed individual. And sometimes these people, if they didn't keep consistent with their tactics of trying to unbrainwash these people, they would go back to the cult. That's where they felt safe, secure, like-minded people, right? So when you're trying to unbrainwash people, you can't tell them. When you try to tell, or when you are talking to folks in the middle, or even people on the left or right for that matter, if you tell them something, they're not really going to answer correctly. They're going to fire back with their belief system and who they're trying to protect. But if you ask questions, that lowers that person down, depending on how brainwashed they are, to that point of neutrality. And this is the point of the middle, because they're getting brainwashed too, right? And at that point of neutrality is when you can input information and say, okay, let's put some logic in here and let's look at this. Now, some people, this isn't going to work because that's how brainwashed they are. Who am I referring to? The woke mind virus to the left. All right. So let me give you an example of someone who's obviously has a very severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. And I know a lot of people that are watching right now, like, yeah, I talk to these types of people all the time. So watch this.
Sir, do you mind me asking, like, why are you voting for Kamala? Do you mind me asking you, why are you voting for Kamala?
Mainly because she's not Trump, because I think he's a thug. He's going to sell out
Like, you think we're better off now than we were 4 years ago?
You're damn right.
I'm not.
He's going to sell out.
I can't even afford
Ukraine
to the
goddamn Putin, his buddy.
Biden
I saw him
and
in-
Harris are the ones who started
he
that
was
war.
moderating.
They're the ones, and we're paying for that war.
And the border is open.
We didn't have a war with Trump. Trump showed us for 4 years we didn't have any wars.
He's kissing ass with
He's
Trump.
not kissing anybody's.
He was elbowing that Ukraine guy in the ear there 2 weeks ago.
That's
What
because
a swine.
that's because, like he said, when he said if he gets
I
it.
hope to hell somebody kills him. We need a better class of
Wow.
assassin.
Well,
That's what we need.
no,
I
sir.
hope somebody
No,
kills that
that's not how we
evil son of a
do.
bitch.
That's not how we do politics in America.
So a lot of folks who are part of the Grassroots Army who's been hammering down and door knocking and having conversations, people are like, yeah, I run into those people all the time. So do I. So as you can tell, that guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He has bought into the woke mind virus. And so the guy initially who was talking to this gentleman had a great question. And this is why I tell people all the time, hey, are you better off than you were 5 years ago? And the guy goes, absolutely not. Or 4 years ago, he said, the guy goes, absolutely not. Right. And he started going off on his faulty woke mind virus belief system on Trump is bad, Trump's rubbing elbows with the enemy and everything else. He's been programmed to say by the corporate media like CNN, MSNBC, and everything else. And then where the guy made, I feel, a tactical error is he came back with his emotion because we get offended, right? Instead of asking a question, a follow-up question, what did that guy do? So he was right in asking this question. Well, do you think we're better off than we were 4 years ago? And the guy's like, yes, he fired up. And that guy's ego who asked the question got mad. He didn't get mad. He got involved. And he said, well, I'm not, and then he kind of fired back. When that kind of conversation happened, it's not going to work. Egos are flared up. There's not going to be any input in. It's over. He's going to walk into the sunset and the other guy's going to walk in the sunset. We see it all the time. So what that gentleman should have done is follow up with more questions. All right. Because that's the most powerful way to get through brainwashing is to ask relevant, logical questions and have that person answer. Don't answer for them. Have that person answer. So a follow-up question after he asked, hey, are you better off 4 years ago? The guy's, absolutely I am, with all of his anger of his brainwashed back belief system. Then your follow-up question, well, sir, stay very calm, look him in the eye, or ma'am, and say, well, can you give me some examples on how you're better off now than you were back then? Let them answer. Let them answer. They're not going to get a good answer. You're not. But it lowers that person neutrality. So what happens is they're just going to storm away angry like this gentleman did. But the people, if they still have a glimpse of hope, right, they're going to stay and have a conversation. Will you change everyone? No, but every vote counts. And so I had a conversation with an old school Democrat, and they're against everything that the Democrats are doing. They're against the indoctrination of the kids in their school. He has granddaughters. He doesn't agree with boys and girls locker rooms, men competing in women's sports. He doesn't agree with everything that's going on with the border, but he defends his belief system still. So this is what he said. I asked him, hey, are you going to vote for Kamala? I mean, you're an old school Democrat. You're the JFKs of the world, even though Robert Kennedy's on Trump's team. He does not like Trump one bit. And he said, nah, I already voted for Kamala. And I said, can I ask why? He's like, because it's not Trump. I said, okay, I hear that a lot. I said, let's just talk about one issue that is going to affect all of us is the illegal immigration. Is over the 10 million illegal immigrants that we know about that is in this country. And he goes, we let people all the time in, Garrett. I was like, well, not that many. And a lot of these people unvetted, and we probably have tens of thousands of horrible, evil people that are in our country now that are going to make our cities and our local communities unsafe. It's already happening. The crime's out of control. Well, Garrett, we need to help everyone. We need to let people in. That's their belief system. Like America, we need to have open borders and everybody comes in, and there's no long vision with this. There's no foresight. How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to create enough jobs for all these people and not take away American jobs? I said, we all can agree that we're going to allow people in this country and further this American dream, but they have to have something to offer. So I believe, and I told them that we need to build a wall and put entrances along that wall and allow people to come in and vet them and make sure they're not evil, and make sure they're going to bring something to the table, that they're not going to be the drain on our system. I mean, that's it. So we can all further. I get why everybody wants to come over here, That's for sure, but they had to come in here legally. And if you ever talk to a legal immigrant who came over here and did it the right way, they were very passionate about the process because they went through it and spent the money and the investment and the time. And you have all these people just coming over and collecting checks from the government, what I feel is wrong. Okay. So that is an example of a very angry person who has Trump derangement syndrome. And they're going to get angrier, folks. When President Trump wins, God willing, here in less than 3 weeks or a little over 3 weeks, they're not going to stop. There's going to be chaos. Don't think that you're going to have to just pick your ball up and go home and everything's going to be hunky-dory. It's not, man. We got a decade of work, and we have to make sure we get right representation in from Trump on down, up and down the ticket, okay? So the fight's just beginning, and I got to have you all understand that. There's going to be some very, very catastrophic things that happen in the future, and you're going to see the corporate media machine and what they do to President Trump. When he starts to deport all these people, they're going to run with the narrative that, oh, he's separating families, he's putting kids in cages. You can already see it, okay? And another thing, before I show a good example on how to get through the woke mind virus, of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is doing an amazing job. He is one of the people, not only do I respect, but the guy has been living and breathing this and built an organization of grassroots, getting on campuses, having hard conversations, getting attacked. The guy, when we do this in November, up and down the ticket, he's going to be one of the main reasons on why we won. Okay. And I hope he gets the recognition for doing so, because he's just been amazing. And the guy is like the Energizer Bunny. So I'm a fan of Charlie Kirk and what he's done. And he deserves all the credit in the world with everything that he has put forth into this thing. So let's get into what the conversation that he had with this gentleman, which I think was beautiful. And when we analyze this, look on how Charlie asks him questions. And then Charlie backs up his statements with data. And you can see the guy go to neutral. The guy has nothing to say, right? You can't come back with emotion and everything else, because then you lose the battle. This guy just sits there, and you can see him working in his mind on how to respond, and he can't, because Charlie is just asks him a question. He doesn't know the answer. So Charlie starts to input at the time, because he got the guy to neutral with facts and stats. And you can just see the guy going, wow, right? And that's what we have to do, is when we have these conversations, just keep asking questions. Don't answer it for them. Unless they just sit there dumb and say, do you have an answer? And they're going to say, well, no. And then you say, well, according to the data and statistics, and that's when you come from the archives with data to support your narrative, okay? Or your belief. So watch this. This is pretty great.
Many unarmed black people, on average, are by police a year?
Well, I'd have to look up that statistic.
Guess.
Probably over 50%.
Yeah, it's 15 people a year.
So look what he just did, right? He had the guy answer. He said, well, I have to look up that statistic, which is fine. But he wanted him to guess. He wanted that guy to go back into his brain and go through all of the brainwashing that he's been told with CNN, MSNBC, these social media gurus, and everything else, and pull something out from those archives and say it. And that's what Charlie Kirk did. He asked him the question. Guy said, well, I don't have that stat. Well, guess. He goes back into his mind, pulls in the book. This is Brainwashing of the Woke Mind Virus, flips through it real quick, sees it and says 50%. And then what does Charlie Kirk do? Does he say, oh, you stupid liberal, what's wrong with you? No. He says, no, here's the facts. Doesn't attack the guy, just comes at him with facts. So let's watch this again, because this is genius.
Many unarmed black people, on average, are by police a year?
Well, I'd have to look up that statistic.
Guess.
Probably over 50%.
Yeah, it's 15 people a year. 15. And that's not my number. That's the Washington Post that came up with it and did a national crime survey. And they even were generous, and they said unarmed, meaning you had a nearby or you had a knife that you dropped. So you're talking about police for an incident that happens 15 times a year in a country of 350 million people.
Well, how come, my question to you then, how come you see it so often on
you don't,
social
because
media?
that's a good question, Andrew, because you're being propagandized. You're being brainwashed is the name of this tour. And I'm here to tell you that you see it, so you actually don't see it as often as you think. This is emotional targeted videoing to have you think that something exists when it doesn't. We look at the data like, oh, it's 15 times a year, 15 times a year, and it's even lower than that. But do you know what does happen a lot every single year? Is that there's over 100,000 doses every single year. We don't talk about that. We should. We should. Totally agree, right? But yet we have this whole thing about police brutality, and no one can ever give me examples of where there's too many police, and that's okay. I'm not just picking on you. Just in general, it's easy to get caught up in the abstractions. It's easy to get caught up in the parade and in all the bedlam. But when you dive into it, you realize that it's all brainwashing.
It's all brainwashing. He's exactly right. So in that situation, you can see those two situations now, right? Who's brainwashed more, do you think the elderly man or that young man, right? The elderly man, because he stormed off, didn't want to have any more conversation. I'm solidified in my belief system. You're not going to change me. I hate the orange man and he needs to go down. Somebody needs to, right? I'm not going to say it because I'll get clipped on the algorithms on social media. And then you have this guy who's, we would probably all agree after watching that video that he's probably neutral after that conversation. Charlie probably didn't sway him to come to the side, right? But you can see that gentleman is neutral now. Charlie was able to what? Input information. So here's the problem, though. That gentleman walked away probably from that situation. And I don't know if this is factual or not. This is just my perception of the situation. He walked away going, well, that's interesting. And he would have two choices at that time. He would become unplugged and awaken and realize he's been brainwashed consistently and aggressively over the past, decade of his life or 2 decades of a life. Or he's going to go back, to where he feels safe and secure, his social media outlets, his corporate media, and he's going to be effectively brainwashed again. That's the two choices. And so we can only hope when these people leave these conversations that they go down the other path of being awakened and start to question things. And I'm saying on both sides of the aisle, right? The rights in some situations is just guilty as this is the left, all right? But the majority of the time, unfortunately, these people that leave those conversations neutral, if they don't have a support system to continue to bring them down that path, they're going to go right back to the old behaviors and attitudes of where they felt safe and secure, start going to the social media outlets that they feel safe and secure, their groups, the corporate media where they have people telling them that you were right. It's all ego, folks. It really is. And that's why you can't attack. And we want to get emotional because it's very personal, all of us, but you can. If you really want to have constructive conversation and win up and down the ticket, you can't attack these people. We're not there. Okay? We're not there. We're getting close. And people are like, it's time. No, it's not. We have to win back this country. It's not time. The only time we have right now is to win and make sure we win. Now, if we lose this one election and lose in the future, it's not going to look good. It's not. Something bad will probably happen. I don't know what that is. But we have to have constructive conversation. We can't attack these people. You can't just constantly just go through. Hold them accountable. I had a gentleman on X. He's constantly, bashing Trump and everything. I see him always comment. He's showing up on my feed. So I looked him up and saw how many other people that he's commenting on. And he's always just bashing Trump and Republicans. And he does it in a pretty smooth way. He does. I mean, he doesn't come out. He just constantly is there attacking other people. So I looked him up, and the first thing on his profile was porn. The top thing. He posted something with a woman in an act. And I'm like, that doesn't look good. I don't care. It's his platform. He can do what he wants. But then I start searching down and just saw all the garbage he's been putting out with Republicans and Trump and everything else. And I just retweeted like, hey, I wanted to see who this guy or who you were and what you were representing. And the first thing I see is you retweeted porn and you're a leftist. So move on and gush over your disgusting leftist candidates or something like that. And he's probably not going to like that. He's probably going to come out and say something. But I always check people who start to ask questions and stuff to see what they're at. And if they're appropriate, good questions, I'll have conversation with those people. But I'm not going to engage with people who are obviously on the left because I'm not going to change their opinion. I would rather engage with people in the middle. So I always try to vet people before I start the conversation with. And if I see something that's hot garbage, I'm going to call them out. And what they do with that information is up to them. But it's about having conversation. It's about asking questions and having that appropriate conversation. They bring those people to neutral. But we're dealing with a woke mind virus, and it's brainwashing. And these people, they always say it's the party of tolerance. It's not. The Democratic Party is not the party of tolerance. They are very violent. They are very vocal. They are very aggressive. They will stand for their belief system, and they will attack you, and they will try to basically take you out. And that's why a lot of people don't stand up and get involved with this stuff, because they will try to do everything that they can to destroy you, your business, your license, whatever it is. I have been through this, continue to go through this ever since I stood up almost 5 years ago. They are relentless, and they will try to destroy you, your livelihood, and everything else. I mean, during the lockdowns, I've had the FBI come to my house. I'd had the health department called on me because we weren't wearing masks in my clinic and everything else. And I had to go through all that. And I still go through stuff to this day. They are nonstop. When you have influence and you're messing with the woke mind virus and their brainwashing techniques, they're going to do everything they can to squash you, to silence you. And you know me, I'm just too damn stubborn to quit, because I believe in what we're doing, and I believe in this little idea called America, and I will continue to do everything I can to win up and down the ticket. That's why I'm going to give you guys a few months off after Trump wins, and hopefully we win up and down the ticket. I'm going to give you a few months. I'm going to give you the holidays. You can have Thanksgiving, you can have Christmas. And then in 2025 in January, I'm going to do a live, and I'm going to activate every single one of you to do what? To get back our state. I made a vow to all of you. And I'm serious. When I make a vow, it's not a promise. It's a vow. And when you make a vow, it's pretty serious. I said I would not quit until we restore the checks and balances of our beloved state. All right? I did that through Stand Up Michigan, through our group Michiganders Against Excessive Quarantine, with my run for governor, try to do it that way. Obviously, I was unsuccessful in that with our run, but I have not left. I'm still standing. And when I make a vow to something, I'm going to keep to it. And I'll take the hits and I'll take the arrows. I'm taking arrows right now. You guys don't even know what's going on in my life right now. And sometime in the near future, you will be told what has happened over the last year with me. But right now, I'm still in the fight. And I will continue to be in this fight until we get the right person in the governor's mansion. And we win up and down the ticket in the next election cycle. We got to get back to state. Okay. Hopefully we get the House back in Michigan. Hopefully we get Mike Rogers to beat Elisa Slotkin, who still refuses to comment. She comes across in these commercials that she's some type of great moderate. She's not. She's a leftist, folks. She refuses to answer about boys and girls locker rooms and restrooms, about men competing in women's sports, because that's what they do. They just won't talk about it. And they want to say that I'm moderate and everything else. Well, the majority of Americans don't agree with that. What's your view on it? And I have trolled her, and she refuses to answer. Mike Rogers says, heck no, don't agree with it. So I'm supporting Mike Rogers. Do I agree with everything Mike Rogers says? No. But Ronald Reagan, you agree with 80% of what I'm trying to do? And we're friends. We're allies. We can argue the other 20%. We don't attack him. We don't call him a rhino. What's your option? Vote for a Slotkin? I'm voting Mike Rogers. That's it. I will support every candidate after the primary. If you don't like that candidate, then run or support the person you think in the next primary to replace that person. That's how our government works. That's it. So we'll continue to hammer down, but we have to get back this state after we win in November. And I'm going to get behind the right candidate who I feel has not only the best shot of winning the general, but also doing great things with the state. And I'm starting to narrow down my search on who that is. Had conversations with a lot of people, spent some time with a lot of people, and I think we're going to have some good candidates to choose from. But I will be supporting the one that I think that's going to represent us the best. That's for sure. Okay. So continue to fight, continue to stand up, have constructive conversation. All right. Use power, not force. It's the main thing that you have to do. Remember that. Don't force, use power. Power is long lasting. You know who used power? Jesus. Jesus used power. He didn't force, he used power. It's a big difference. There's actually a book written on that. Power versus Force. Great book. You should read it. Okay. But if you want to read about the brainwashing, Snapping, it's an old book. It has a lot of good information about the mind and how to re-brainwash people, or unbrainwash people, I should say. But we're all brainwashed, right? We all been told something ever since we were born. Maybe we're all in a matrix. Who knows? I tend to feel that I'm unplugged, but I know a lot of you are all unplugged. But are we really? It's a deep conversation for another time. So have a great day. God bless you. God bless State of Michigan, of course, and always. God bless these United States. Till next time.